Hi everybody, I'm Rick Beato. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to get a great snare sound for your recording. That's next on Everything Music. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is the actual drum itself and what is the right drum to choose. What I have up here is a Ludwig Black Beauty snare. It's the most recorded snare on record, pretty much. It's used on many rock records and has been for years. The Black Beauty is constructed of a single sheet of brass that is machine drawn into a seamless beaded shell. If any of you have watched some of my previous videos, you know that it has triple flanged hoops. There's different types of hoops that can be found on snare drums, but Ludwigs typically have triple flanged hoops unless they've been replaced. Now, this particular one has a coated head with a dot on it, a dot underneath it. It's called an Emperor X. Now, this particular snare drum head I like to use for rock bands, especially if it's a heavier sounding rock band, because this tends to be more durable and focus the sound better for the snare. Also, it doesn't have as many overtones as a single ply head, for example, a coated Ambassador, which would be a single ply coated head. This is a 2-ply head with a dot, okay? It's a really durable head. It can take a lot of rim shots without detuning and without denting, okay? Now, one of the other things about it's harder to tune to pitch, so if you're trying to get a particular snare drum pitch for a song, this is more difficult to do. If you want a really pitched sound, and sometimes songs will require that you get a really pitched sound and it'll sound great on it, one that's right in key with the track, and we'll talk about that too. But this doesn't have quite as obvious of a pitch to it because it's a 2-ply head and it has the center dot. Okay, there is a pitch though. As I'm talking, I can hear the snare ringing. Now, that pitch is an E flat. How do I know that? Because I checked before we started. Okay, if I play, that's an E flat, but I hear a high overtone, which is C. So I'm hearing an E flat and a C when I tap near the edge of the rim. Now, when you're actually playing a drum in a track and you're hitting rim shots, you do hear those notes, but they're not quite as obvious as they are if I tap right on the edge of the rim. Okay, so you have to take this into consideration with your snare drum tuning. This is where dampening comes into a lot of great importance. But I'd like to talk about one thing first, which is the different type of drummers. Okay, there's 2 different categories. There are center hitters and there are rim shotters. Center hitters, people that hit in the center of the drum like this, are typically people that play indie rock. You'll find a lot of British bands that do that. I want to say relegated towards indie rock, but most indie rock bands that I record have center hitters for the drummers. Anybody that grew up listening to Led Zeppelin is a rim shotter. Dave Grohl's a rim shotter, John Bonham's a rim shotter. Most rock drummers are rim shotters, Josh Freese, you name it. And what is a rim shot? Well, a rim shot is simply when the rim and the snare hit at the same time. Okay, so you're actually hitting the rim with the stick while you're contacting on the snare. Now, why are rim shots good? Rim shots are good because they're powerful and they cut through the mix. One of the problems with rim shots, there's a couple problems. One problem is that if you mishit it, you get a thin sound. I did it already. If I go, it's hard to hit consistent rim shots every time unless you're a great drummer. So I'll find people, if I have a center hitter that I feel should be playing rim shots that's not used to it, you'll find that you'll have a lot of inconsistent hits in the drum part and need to punch in a lot to fix or do a lot of takes until they get it right. So for rock, I prefer rim shotting. For indie rock, I like rim shotting or center hitting. It really doesn't matter. With center hitting, you do not need to tune the drum as much, because when you're not coming in contact with the rim, the drum doesn't detune, so you're pretty much set. You almost never have to check the pitch. Plus, it's not as pitched of a sound as a rim shot. A rim shot brings out all these harmonics. Another thing about rim shotting is usually when you're rim shotting, because you're rim shotting with your left hand if you're playing on a hi-hat, usually these two lugs here that are right in between where the rim shot is usually go out of pitch. Usually the one closest to where you're hitting the rim shot. Because triple flange hoops are really flexible, they tend to depress on impact, and eventually those lugs will spin out unless you use lug locks. I will typically tune the snare drum after every single take because I do not want it to go out of tune. Another thing that can happen is that the bottom lug can back out if the guy is really hitting it or woman is hitting it really hard, okay? So anyway, so rim shotting and center hitting are an important part of your drum sound. One of the most important parts. Before we go on, I'd like to play you some examples of things that I've recorded and produced so you can hear the drum sound. Okay, let me play you some stuff. None of this really means anything unless you actually have heard some of my work. So I'll play you some drum sounds from some of the projects I've done. This is a band called Jump Little Children that I did a while back. And this is a really cool drum sound on this track. Really up front, dry snare. This is a song. Down a new corridor. This is a Shinedown track. Through the water past the shore. That was not on their first record, but it was the title of the record. It's called Leave a Whisper. This is a tune by Owen Beverly. It's called For Mia. It's available on iTunes. For you, Mia. Really up front, tight, dry drum sound. You hear the ring on the snare. Really important to the track. This is a band called named Crowfield. This is also available. There's no way to know who's next in line. More of an organic snare sound. This is a band called Slam. This is a band called Halo Stereo. Great room, natural room sound. This is a This is an old band called The Falls Lost. The bass player Eric from Shinedown was the bass player in this band. This is a long time ago. This never even came out. Always pick out your voice through a crowd. It filters into me. Cool, tight drum sound. It's how familiar falling. I try to escape. This is a band called Airspace, whose record never came out. It's an amazing record. Now this is an example of center hitting. Really fat. Real up front rim shot. Hard to get a good rim shot sound. This is a band called Essex. Great room sound. This is the drummer, Matt Johnson from Jeff Buckley, who played on Grace. The singer is Eric Dabowski, who's a great producer based in Australia. That's a really, really fat snare. This is Airspace again. This is more of a dead sound with a Rimshot though. So this is it has a it's got a lot of bottom end. Anyways, I think that gives you a good idea as to the different kind of drum sounds that I've gotten on records. I can't play you any of the major label records that I've done because they'll take it off YouTube. Okay, two important elements about your snare drum are the length of the ring and the length of the snares. Okay, when you hit the snare, if you have snares are really tight, you have a very short sound. Now, if I loosen the snares a lot and I hit it, it's still long. No. Let me really loosen them here. Here the snares rattle a lot longer. What you want to do is you want the snares to be about the length of whatever the particular tempo is, either a eighth note, quarter note, depending on how long they're going to last, what the tempo is. But if my tempo is like do da do do da do, so I want my snares do do. I want them to last like it's reverb essentially, okay, and last that long. Faster songs need shorter snare lengths. You don't want your snare rattling around when you're doing an up-tempo song. It'll be really distracting. It's not going to have the power. So I usually will tighten it up and I will test it depending on the tempo of the song. The next thing you don't want is you don't want a lot of weird overring. If you're not good at tuning your snare to the key of the song, even if you are, a lot of times you don't even want that. Now, some of the examples that I just played, like the Owen Beverly, for example, the ring was really part of the drum sound, really important to it. There are a couple things that are very common that we use in the studio to shorten the drum sound. One is called moon gel. You can buy it anywhere, at any music store, any drum shop, whatever. Now, this is a piece of moon gel that I've cut with a razor blade. It's a very small piece. And I'm going to demonstrate here about the length of the snare and the ring. Okay, so if I take a finger and I go like this, see how one finger shortens it? If I take two fingers and put them, it shortens it even more. See how it clamps down? So many times what I like to do is take a couple pieces of moon gel, and let's say my mic is going to be right here. I will take two pieces and put them on each side of the microphone, okay? Two pieces about the same size, and put them here and here, for example, okay? And the mic will kind of be right in between that, and eliminated the problem. Now, the closer to the rim you are, the longer the snare is going to be and the more ring you're going to have, okay? See, we're starting to get some ring there. Then I move it in a little bit. The ring starts to go away. It's kind of counterintuitive. You think that the ring is more on here, but it's actually deadening the entire head. Now the other thing, if you don't have access to moon gel, is gaff tape. Now gaff tape looks like this. It's like duct tape, but it's not duct tape. It's really used in the studio a lot. And it's expensive. It's a pain. But so a lot of times I will take a piece of gaff tape and rip off a piece, let's say about, I don't know, 5-6 inches long. And I will take it and I will place it here on the front of the drum. So it's kind of touching the rim like that. And it will achieve the same thing, and I can leave it. I like to let it hang a little bit like this so that I can, if I need to make it a little bit longer, and I specifically will put it on the rim here because that will kill those overtones on the rim, okay? Sometimes if it's still too much, I'll move it over here and I'll place it right under where the microphone is, okay? Because the microphone is going to be about here picking it up. I'll show mic placement in a little bit. Anyways, but that's going to control your sound even more. The having the dot in the head, having a coated head helps, but moon gel or gaff tape, you don't want to use regular duct tape. Duct tape will fly right off. Gaff tape has much better grip on it and leaves no residue. Before I go on, I'd like to mention that this is a 14 by 6.5 inch snare. There are two common sizes, even though you've got 13-inch snares, you got 12-inch snares, you have piccolos and that. But the two common sizes are 14 by 6.5 or 14 by 5. Okay, so you can see the difference here. This snare is a little bit bigger. It's got a little bit more different tone because of that. I won't say it's got more beef because you get beef out of both of them, but these are the two main snare drum sizes that you're going to be dealing with. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is snares. They're the things on the bottom of the snare drum. Okay, there's two types of snare wires you can get. On this drum, there is a normal size, which is 16 snare wires. Okay, that's a normal size one. But on this drum here, this is a risen snare drum, mahogany snare. That's I believe a 42 wire snare drum, something like that. But it's a huge one, and it gives a really different sound. The wires last a lot longer. It's really cool for that. This also has this trick throw off that is very, very hip. It's got 3 different stops, so it will make, it becomes looser and looser, and you can adjust it for different lengths really quickly during a set or while you're recording. I have a trick throw off that I replaced on this Black Beauty. Ludwig drums have really bad throw offs, I hate to say it. They just come with bad throw offs, they do. This trick one that I replaced years and years ago, I had to have a special adapter that I bought for it to go on it because Black Beauties and Superphonics have this little lip that is in the middle of the drum that you have to mount around. So anyways. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is mic placement, and I want to talk about it because it's easy to see here without all the drums around it. Typically, there's a few different ways you can mic a snare drum. Okay, you can mic it from here, kind of facing the center of the drum. A lot of times I will bring it down. It really depends on how the hi-hat is, for example. A lot of times I will keep it down low like this, facing the center of the drum, and it all depends. I want to reject as much of the hi-hat as I can. Let's say the hi-hat's right here, so I always want it facing away from the hi-hat, obviously. You don't want to come in from this side, because obviously it'd be right in front of the drummer. But you also don't want it too far in where it's going to have the risk of being hit. Now, sometimes, depending on the drum, I will have it come up like this, and I'll actually angle it down more and get more of the rim sound, where it'll get more overtones on it. It really depends, but a lot of the times I like to just kind of have it like that or so, or I'll have it where it throws more towards the center of the drum. Occasionally I'll back it up a little bit so it gets a little bit more air on it. This will also affect where the snare bottom mic is. Okay, you can see the snare top from this angle, and the snare bottom is right here. Now, it's kind of facing towards the snares. That's the whole purpose of it. It's also about the same distance, you know, a couple fingers worth away from the snare, which I'm doing on the top as well. You want to keep it the same distance away so that the phase is correct on it. Okay, usually though, I'd probably have this mic in a little bit closer, like that. That looks pretty good. The other type of common snare top miking is using a small diaphragm condenser blended with a 57. Now, this particular 57 I have here is a transformerless 57. I feel like they have a little bit more punch and a little more bottom end. The idea is to have the capsules at an equal distance apart. The capsules should be exactly the same distance away from each other. And the condenser mic's going to get the top end of the snare and the real bottom end too. It's going to get a really full sound. And what we do is blend the two together. I'll either blend it in the control room or I'll record them both and then blend them in Pro Tools later. I might even EQ them a little bit further, but they go into separate mic channels into the control room into separate mic pre's and will be affected. I'll actually EQ both of them sometimes differently too. This is a real common miking technique. Bob Clearmountain, I believe, was the first guy to do this back in the 80s, but Brendan O'Brien, you name it, everybody pretty much does it like this. This is the common professional snare drum miking technique, is with a 57 and a 451 or 452 or any type of small diaphragm condenser mic next to each other like that. They actually make a little holder for it. I know somebody's going to put it in the comments, but I know about that. I just haven't gotten one. That's all for now. Please subscribe here to get notified every time I put out a new video. Also, if you want to find out any of the other links associated with me, they're all in the description down below. I'm Rick Beato.